Welcome in to the Pigskin Cafe. Hey, grateful that you made time to listen to this, to watch this, whether you're on your way to work or in the shower or whatever you're doing, cutting grass. Got two of my favorite friends that are joining me. I've got Spencer Strider that's joining us. Graham's got a mustache and a little bit of a soul patch, which makes him look like the leader in strikeouts in the MLB this season. And Hampton, I was hoping that you were going to have Mike in hand so I can introduce you as Sergio Dip, like you were last video. But
What a
hey,
prime opportunity missed.
that's right. That's right. So we've got some football that we've got to talk about, fellas. And I think that we could come up with better language for what we're going to call this week rather than week 0. But that's what we're calling it right now. So let's jump right into it. Graham, I'm going to start with you. Several games we want to talk about tonight, but let's look back before we look forward. Notre Dame goes to Ireland to play Navy, this historic matchup. Huge build-up. We're excited. College football is back. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I think my reaction is more to the the preview of the game more than the game itself. I think that when you were watching the commercials, it was every other one was Navy and Notre Dame in Ireland, and it was exciting for football to be back. And then you watch the game, and you're kind of disappointed that was what it built up to. I think the hype that was leading up to it was so high, and I think for good reason. I think that it was the first game of the year in another country. I think it's a great thing to do, but it was such a bad game because Navy is not a powerhouse like they were in the 1950s. I mean, Notre Dame, still a Power 5 program, has gone downhill just a little bit since their heyday in the mid 2010s, but it's it's a different kind of generation. In 1965, this is probably the national championship game because Navy has some national championships. They have Heisman winners. Notre Dame Heisman winners, national championships. But you look at it now, and it's like this is not the build-up that you're expecting. So y'all forgive the dog in the background. He's hearing a little barking from the neighbors. He's going to be all right. Hampton, let's talk about the dogs in Southern California.
The dogs in Southern California?
Well, it's just kind of a bad transition, but I was talking about dogs, and now we're going to the Fresno State Bulldogs.
Go ahead, Chase.
Go ahead. What I was going to just offer was that we have a special connection to what Graham was trying to get at. I'm talking about the USC Trojans who also played, and we got to see a glimpse of that. We used to be called. God, remind me what we used to call this podcast, Hampton.
The Trojan Tailgate Podcast.
That's right. And people thought that this was either a Troy podcast about Troy football, or maybe where we got some clicks was from the USC Trojan football podcast. So tell us how they did this weekend. What was your reaction to the reigning Heisman winner and the dogs on defense that Graham was referring to?
Beautiful way to meld that together.
Right.
Quick before I get into USC, I did want to say on the Notre Dame game, shout out Kyle Edwards. I think he got a team this year. I know it's Navy. I know it's week 1. Two things can be true at once. They absolutely dominated Navy from snap 1 to the end of the game. They were 5 of their first 5 possessions ending in touchdowns. Sam Hartman looked like everything that they wanted him to be. They had a good offensive line, good run game. And if you pair Sam Hartman with that run game, that offensive line, and add a little bit of an explosive element to this team, they're going to be dangerous as we head into the meat of the schedule. And I, for one, cannot wait to see it play out on the field. But to USC, the question and the team that you asked me about, shocking no one, they come out and they look fantastic on the offensive side of the ball. Caleb Williams was balling, looked like he hadn't missed a step. Marshawn Lloyd, the running back transfer from the other USC, South Carolina, came in, looked really good. Zachariah Branch, breakout player, know the name. He looked electric in the open field, both as a receiver and as a special teams guy. I think he had over 230 all-purpose yards, a couple touchdowns. Really impressed with him. But the question with USC is never offense. It's always defense. And I listened to a few shows kind of trying to defend the defensive performance that was put out on the field Saturday, saying, oh, well, they rotated a bunch of guys. They were trying to get their depth, some experience, some reps against a team that they knew they would be able to handle no problem in San Jose State. The problem with that is it was 21-14 at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
And, you give up a 3rd and 22 to their quarterback, Cordero, that looked like something you would see in a Pee Wee football game. I mean, the left side of the field just opens up and he runs for a first down. They had a few blown coverages, and I know they've done some recruiting via the transfer portal with guys like Barry Alexander, a couple other guys on that defense that is supposed to improve that unit, but I didn't see anything that made me think, yeah, their defense is going to be good enough to where they can win a national championship. And I know they were rotating a bunch of guys and everything, but to me, it's still not a good look against San Jose State to give up 28 points, to give up 14 before half, and have it be that close to the game. So that'll be interesting to watch if Alex Grinch can get that defense, not even on the level of their offense, but just above average. That's really all they need to win the Pac-12 with the high-flying offense they have. So that was my main takeaway from that game out west.
Yeah, and I think for them, I mean, you cut a little bit of grace because it's the first game. There's going to be hiccups. If anytime there's going to be blown coverage, it'll be the first game. So for them, it's going to be, is this something that's going to be a season-long, trying to improve the defense, or some of these just genuine mistakes, which, it's probably a mix of both. But like you said, the reputation has gone before them of their defense has not kept up with their offense, and it's not even close. Before we move on from week 0 reactions, I think that I got to offer this. Graham, you mentioned a little bit of just the build up to week 0. I had a problem, fellas, that I wake up on Saturday ready to go. My feet hit the floor, and I'm excited. I'm excited to cut on game day. And what a miss that you cut on game day, and they're hyping up that the game is going to be played in Ireland. What a cool location. And that game day is in a studio, no crowd. I honestly didn't even, it felt like just the college football live that's on random times during the summer that you don't even realize if it's actually live or if that's just the name of the show. And man, I just felt like it was a miss. If you're gonna do week 0, college game day needs to be there, needs to hype it up, but especially if you're gonna go to somewhere cool like Ireland. So that's my 2 cents. It would have taken it up from, I feel like, about a 3 level of energy to at least a 7. So let the Ireland people have that. Would have been awesome. But let's keep on moving, fellas. This was a game that I'm going to ask you about. Played last year. Was honestly a great start to the season. But as the season went on, it was a quality matchup. And one of those, games that you look back on, and you use that as a measuring stick of how good are these teams. So Graham, I'm going to start with you on this. Well, actually, Hampton, I'll start with you since this is start with Graham last time. Utah versus Florida. Really good matchup. We got the Pac-12 and the SEC. How do you see this game going? How does it hit your radar? How do you see it playing out?
I'm pumped for this game, gentlemen. I put it in our group chat today that I'm excited. Like you were talking about how you got up on Saturday ready for game day. I'm going to get up ready tomorrow for this game. Really intriguing matchup that's lost a little bit of its luster due to the news that came out from ESPN's Pete Thamel. A lot of people have thought this and prognosticated this. Shout out to who called that word usage out last pod. That Cam Rising is not going to play for the Utes. It's going to be, I believe his name is Bryson Brown. It's going to be the backup quarterback playing for Utah. That kind of changes the game, in my opinion, because I think Utah, if you told me they're coming in with a healthy Cam Rising, I'm probably going to pick them to win the game because I'm really high on their offensive line and their ability to run the ball and be very physical. Apparently, they feel really good about their defense this year. But with a backup quarterback, it's going to be difficult. And Florida, we talked about them in our SEC preview pod. I think they're a very interesting team. They're not getting a lot of buzz going into the year, but they're kind of wanting to do a similar thing that Utah does as far as they want to run the ball, they want to be physical, and then I think they feel very confident in Graham Mertz. I heard when I was listening to Late Kick yesterday that Billy Napier told Josh Pate that he talked to Paul Chryst, the former head coach of Wisconsin, and kind of they got some insight from him about how they misused Mertz while he was in Wisconsin. So Billy Napier and his staff feel like they have a plan that they can really accentuate what he does well. They're going to run the ball with Montreal Johnson, Trevor Etienne, and they're going to go play action pass with Graham Mertz and try to be explosive down the field when the opportunities present themselves. I see this being a low-scoring game, an old kind of like mid-2000 type college football game, very physical. And in the end, I know Utah has the home field advantage, but I think Florida not only will win this game, I think they have to win this game. Because if you don't win this game playing a backup quarterback, I'm kind of afraid about the outlook for the rest of your year because it doesn't get any easier from here. So I think they really need this to build off of and kind of propel themselves as they head into the SEC schedule that's coming up in a few weeks. Graham, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think you got some valid points there. It's going to be very, very big that Cam Rising is not playing for Utah. I think that really changes the complexity of the game that Utah can put out there. I think that the trust they have with Cam Rising, his ability to move the football in the air and with his legs, he and all these big games that he plays in, he's always laying his body on the line for that 3rd and 7. He dives and gets hammered by 5 defensive linemen. So man, I think it's really big that he's not going to be able to play. But I think that we don't really bring into consideration the fact that Utah is so much of like a scheme football team. Like it does not matter the player. Like scheme is most important. Like the identity of the team is more important than any one player. So I think that in a situation like this, a backup quarterback can be successful. And it's going to be a tough game for Florida to travel all the way to Salt Lake City to play on a Thursday night and an excited crowd, reigning Pac-12 champions. And for Florida, it's really, they're not really returning a lot. You're having a new, starting quarterback, replace your defensive coordinator. You lose so much of your starting defense from last year. Rashad Torrance, Brent Cox, Trey Dean. You're losing some big time players for Florida. So you're really having to replace new guys and having to step in a tough environment in Utah. So Florida's got an uphill battle, in my opinion. I think the spread is 4.5 points, 5 on some sites. I think that's probably fair, but to me, I think that Florida's just so far, they've just got so much to overcome that I just don't know if Florida can top what Utah has and what Utah will bring on Thursday night in Salt Lake City. So I think Utah's going to win. I don't really know if now's the time with your pick, but I just want to point out that Hampton has now seen the light. So,
well,
you gotta feel that I have no idea what just happened.
My lighting for like the first 5 minutes of the show was impeccable. And then it looks like I'm on the face of the sun or that I'm Oppenheimer watching the Trinity test where it's just light on my face. And so I thought turning it off and then turning back on might help. But obviously that did not work. So we're just going to rock with it for the rest of the show.
I just loved how clearly you could hear the click.
It was so crisp. Such a crisp.
Oh man. Okay, fellas. Hey, I think that what's interesting about this matchup to me is that Utah is a little bit of the definition of, I would say, consistency in the midst of Pac-12's instability. Of someone like, why is USC not winning the Pac-12? Well, it's because Utah is consistent, like you said, Graham, scheme over player. But I think they're a really good football team. And truthfully, guys, is being a little bit of having just a little bit of Big 12 ownership. I would say that Utah is one of the teams that I'm really excited for, of them coming to the Big 12. And I think that that's a team that brings a lot. It might not be the person that, or the team that's the most exciting to add, but just has a good culture. Obviously, I had a coach for a really long time. So this, again, I love this matchup because I think that Utah might be in a position where if they were to lose this, it doesn't define their season because they're consistent, they're stable. But if you're Florida, they've let one loss determine their season. I don't know how long you want to look back, but it's been that way the past few seasons of they've had one loss that's defined. It would have been a win or a loss to define their whole season. So let's keep moving. Let's stay West Coast. We've got Boise versus Washington. Hampton, I'll start with you again. What are your thoughts about that game?
I think it's a really intriguing matchup because Washington is a team that comes in 2023 with lofty expectations. I mean, the Husky fans expect to not only compete for a Pac-12 championship, but to win it. I mean, they were very close last year. Well, they went 11-2, if I'm not mistaken. Michael Penix Jr. is on a lot of Heisman watch lists going into the year. They had an explosive offense last year. Their defense struggled a little bit, but if you compare them to like an Oregon or even a USC, mainly USC, very similar numbers in how they ranked and how they panned out. And you got Penix coming back, like I said. I think they're going to make a statement week one. Boise is a good program. They've been good since Chris Peterson, in the mid-2000s really established them. And Brian Harsin took over and made them soar to even higher heights. But I don't think this is a good matchup for them. I believe Washington is going to roll in this one. I know they're favored, I think, by about 21 points. And so give me the Huskies in this one.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you would probably agree with that. Do you agree with this analysis? I think I do too. I think that that's kind of a cool matchup just in the sense of those two programs seem to be kind of tied and that it's a little bit of a younger brother versus an older brother, but really fun matchup. We'll definitely have my eyes on it this weekend. Let's keep moving, though. This is one of the ones that excites me the most of this week one matchup. We've got South Carolina that has a ton of buzz, and then UNC, who I would say is a team that has had buzz, but let's maybe say they're 1 or 2 years down the line of what South Carolina hopes that they could be. And don't take me too far on that, but just UNC's had some buzz. They're living in it. They've underperformed, but still have that. They're living in it. And South Carolina wants to get there, but it's had some awesome wins last year. So, Graham, I'm going to start with you. Game day is going to be there. South Carolina, North Carolina, battle of the border. Who do you got? Give me your reaction.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun game to start the year with. I mean, you remember last year, North Carolina went to Boone and to play App State, and it was a shootout. And it was what you really have missed for 9 months of not having football. It was it was all of that. You were this way for 14 points, that way for 14 points, onside kicks, interceptions, great plays all around. I hope that this is the same kind of game. I think that UNC has arguably the best quarterback in the country in Drake May. Right up there with Caleb Williams. USC has a resurgent, Spencer Rattler, who played better last year than I think people expected. I think the big storyline in Chapel Hill is that their wide receiver Tez Walker was denied his eligibility waiver.
Officially? He was officially denied?
Well, I think they're still kind of going through it. So I think that yeah. So I think that it was one of those things that if it wasn't really approved, then there's not much second chance at it. And so that's a big loss for North Carolina. USC is returning a good amount of their offense. They've built up a lot of hype in the offseason of exciting videos, exciting the fan base. And I think this is, will build off of last year's win at Clemson where, people aren't really expecting South Carolina to be that good at football. I think this will be their first chance to really present themselves to the world of this is going to be our year. So I would kind of predict USC to win. I think North Carolina still struggles on defense. Mac Brown is not as energetic as Shane Beamer, and I think that's going to be the difference to me. I think the South Carolina is really excited about football this year. I think North Carolina is excited they have a good quarterback, but they're kind of disappointed of what's around him. Hampton, what do you think about that?
I agree with you. I've got South Carolina winning this game for many of the reasons you stated. I know that Tez Walker, is that correct, Graham? That's the name of the
Yes.
receiver for them. Yeah, that appeal is still, there's not been a final resolution on it, which is ridiculous. The NCAA doing its best work yet again. And if he does not play, that's a big loss for North Carolina because receivers, they're kind of lacking a few playmakers on the outside, especially if he doesn't play. Last year, Drake May was their leading rusher. I don't know if you guys realize that, but he was Mr. Do It All for him last year. And I think this year, Phil Longo went to Notre Dame, and we talked about Notre Dame earlier, and they kind of had a few new wrinkles in their offense and relied more on that running game. Well, Chip Lindsey is now the offensive coordinator. Our old pal, Chip Lindsey, old friend,
long-time
he
listener.
is now the offensive coordinator at North Carolina. And I believe that coaching staff is kind of feeling we've got to help Drake May out more this year. What we did last year was not sustainable from putting everything on his shoulders, whether it be running, passing, improvising. Drake, bail us out. They cannot do that again this year and have success. So I believe there's going to be a more concerted effort to run the ball. And, Drake May is fantastic. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And so he's going to be the reason North Carolina stays in this game. But with South Carolina, you mentioned Rattler, who's had a great camp. Juice Wells, the receiver, is going to play. Nick Harbor, who we talked about on the show last week as a breakout player, he's good to go. Trey Knox, the tight end, he's good to go. And I believe they're going to attack vertically. They're going to try to be explosive because my dear pal Gene Chizik, who I love to death, and I wanted to be the Baylor head coach after Matt Rule left him. Good man, great on the SEC network. That defense last year was dreadful. And not saying they can't improve this year. I've got to see with my own two eyes because if they're not significantly better, I believe South Carolina wins this one by double digits. And I don't mean by 20 or so, but I think they could win by 10 to 14 because while I don't believe South Carolina's defense is fantastic, it's better than North Carolina. So give me South Carolina. Too many weapons around Rattler and too much on Drake May in week one. But I'm with you, Graham. Exciting game. Great way to kick it off at a neutral site. You got one more thing you want to say?
Yeah, I wanted to set the record straight. So this is as of August the 16th. So a little tiny bit dated of information. The NCAA denied Tez Walker's request for immediate eligibility, but North Carolina is appealing that decision. There's a little more details involved. It was denied because he was a second-time transfer, but the situation regarding his first technical transfer are some kind of gray area because he initially planned to enroll at a I think an FCS school and then got hurt, and so I don't necessarily know that really worked out, and then ended up at Kent State and now transferred to North Carolina. So another reason of why this transfer portal in the NCAA is complete chaos.
I'm just glad that we're willing to put our foot down when it comes to something like this. Like, I mean, come on, guys. This, yeah, man. I don't know. I mean, not even to go down the rabbit hole, but the NCAA's future I think in totality is up for question. Hampton, it seems like this has got you. You got to fit one in, do it, brother.
One statement, and I've heard it before, and it's true. College football is a great game run by average people. Shout out Josh Pate for that one.
That's giving them a lot of credit, Hampton. That's giving them a lot
average
of credit.
Is being a little excessive in my praise, but still.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I mean, I heard him talking about the Pac-12 just commissioners, and he's like, they've been bad. And just this is what happens when you have two back-to-back bad commissioners.
Yeah, poor management.
Yeah. So let's keep on moving, fellas. I'm really excited for that game. That's one of those that I think that if the score will permit, I'd love to watch the whole thing because that's a college football is back kind of moment. Let's stay in the ACC for a second. Graham, I'm going to pick your brain, and Hampton, if you want to add something, just kind of on the tail end of this. I think y'all are probably going to agree, but let's talk about a team that's going to try to make a playoff run here, matching up against a team that I think's heading in the right direction. Clemson versus Duke. Graham, again, you got Dabo, and I think that they're trying to take a step and maybe find their identity again with DJ transferring to Oregon State, trying to turn the page in a respectful way. But they've got some, like we talked about, the team South Carolina we just talked about beat them at the end of last year. So how do you see this game playing out? But maybe just cast a little bit of vision of what Clemson is trying to establish in this first game.
Yeah, the first thing that I want to point out is that I'm thankful for Clemson and Duke because they were willing to play on Monday night. I think that's great for college football to have a full weekend spread. Not going to leave anybody hanging. I think the storyline is obviously Cade Klubnik for Clemson. But it's also how much Duke exceeded expectations last year. They ended the year 9-4, I think, at home. Mm-hmm. The stats were they were 5-1 at home, which is a big indicator of the culture that Mike Elko is building in Durham. 3-3 on the road and one. They won their only neutral site game. I think Clemson has got to respond really quick. I think Clemson needs to get the football first. They need to go score, or they could be in for a slugfest. This Duke team, coached by Mike Elko, they're going to fight you regardless of who you are. What you think you are, Duke's going to fight you. Earlier in the year last year, it was week 4, and it was the most hyped game of the year up to that point was Duke going to Kansas to play. Two schools that are traditionally not that good at football were both undefeated at the time. I think this Duke team could take a step. Is it going to be 10 wins? Will they repeat at 9? Or was they exceeded expectations too much in the first year that year 2 will be a letdown? Clemson better watch out. Do I think that Clemson wins? Yeah. But I think this could be one of those games that it comes down to a field goal or a last-minute touchdown, and that's what pulls Clemson ahead. I think Duke's going to be scrappy. Clemson has had some struggles, especially last year. Just their standard has been so high, and you have a year where you're not living up to the standard. How do you respond to that? So I think Clemson wins, but Duke is going to go out there and scrap and fight. So Clemson in a close one. Hampton, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the quarterback situation. Will Shipley at running back for Clemson, compared to I don't even know who the quarterback is for Duke. I will admit that. But I have heard and I have read and I have seen that a lot of people have Duke as a Cinderella kind of team for the ACC. They could come out of nowhere and conquer the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll be really quick with this. I'm with you. Your assessment of the game mirrors mine. Clemson wins, but I don't believe they blow Duke out. I think it's a closely contested game for the majority of it. 2 things I'm watching. How does Garrett Riley's system translate to Clemson? How does he utilize Cade Klubnik with his ability to throw the ball down the field, but also his running ability, which I believe is his greatest strength right now at this point in his young career? And are they going to be able to generate have some guys step up on the outside to be playmakers for him? Defense is going to be good because they always are at Clemson. That was not their problem last year. The problem was offensive side of the ball. So they tried to rectify that and tweak it, and we'll see how that plays out. Duke quarterback Riley Leonard from Mobile, Alabama, really solid player, and I'm excited to kind of see him in a primetime environment and see how he responds. So with you, Graham, Clemson, in a close one.
A close one. Hey, Graham, let me bounce this off you. It says that what I see is that the spread's 13 points towards Clemson. What are you thinking?
I'd probably take Duke in that. I think 13 points is a little much.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about Garrett Riley, but this Duke team on Monday night, the lights are going to be on them, and it's going to be. I think it's going to be like Hampton. I think it's going to be one of those 3 to 7 point games, or it's going to be, Clemson will win by 35. I think there's not a it's either going to be a great game or a really bad game. I think there's no in between. But I think that Hampton and I are both on the same page that it will be close and it'll come down to the wire. I think, which is kind of nice for a Monday night of college football.
Yeah, love it. Hey, let's keep moving. I got one more game we want to talk about, and then just a couple of high level questions to get us out of here. So, I think this is a really cool way they've done this matchup. We're about to talk about. So, we got FSU and LSU, and what I think is actually kind of awesome about this is that last year they played in New Orleans, which I thought was just a fun environment. It was it added some. It wasn't quite a neutral site, but it was a neutral site. And I think to balance that out, what they're doing this time is that they're going to let FSU be the home team, and they're playing in Orlando, which I think is just a fun way to do it. I don't know if your season ticket holders love it. I'm sure you want the home game, but this was probably scheduled way before that train of thought and philosophy has come back around. But I think it's a cool way to split it up of neutral site, but still in close proximity. So really fun game, an awesome game last year. Awesome last year.
Yeah.
So, Hampton, I'll start with you. Just FSU, LSU. I really want to kind of give you just the stage and let you take it whichever direction that you want. You have the floor. What are you thinking?
Really intriguing matchup. Top 10. FSU comes in with a lot of hype. So does LSU. FSU is projected to win the ACC, and our very own Mr. Graham Haney projected LSU to win the West. And you kind of look at this game from a year ago, it had an awesome ending, but it was honestly for the first three quarters, it was a very poorly played game. And both teams kind of, as the year went along, developed into a team that you did not want to face. And you look at FSU, you got Jordan Travis coming back, who I'm a big fan of. He's on a lot of Heisman watch lists going into the year. You got Johnny Wilson outside. You got Keon Coleman, the Michigan State transfer, coming in at receiver. They had a really good running game last year. They've got a couple guys coming back. So I believe on the offense side of the football, they're going to be able to be balanced. They're going to be able to run it when they want. They're going to be able to pass it and hit plays over the top when they want, and also be physical on the offensive line. Defensively, Jared Verse, the All-American, who many people thought was going to go into the NFL draft, he came back to school. He's going to be a weapon for them on the outside, rushing the passer. They got a couple other transfers in that are going to really boost that defense and have them playing at a really high level. And then LSU, we kind of talked about them last week, but I think there's been some interesting developments with them. John Emery, not going to play for the game. Mason Smith, their All-American, projected All-American defensive tackle, he's not going to play in this game. Those are two big pieces. John Emery, not as much as Mason Smith, but I'm interested to kind of see how LSU works around that, because those are two integral parts of their football team. Ultimately, I believe this is a really close game, but I got FSU. I picked FSU to win last year. I believe they're a team on a mission this year. If not now, win for them. I mean, they've got, it's either 17 or 18 of their 22 starters from last year coming back, I believe is the number. Don't quote me if I'm wrong on that. But they're going to be a juggernaut in the ACC, and I believe they're making a statement on Sunday night in front of a primetime audience, and I have them winning a very close game against the Bayou Bengals.
Love it. Graham, give us your 2 cents. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I'm so on point with what Hampton is saying. This is, honestly, such a big year for Mike Norvell. Give Florida State credit. They've trusted the process of allowing him to rebuild, to retool, to implement the system that he thinks will be effective in Tallahassee. And last year, I think that they had several bright moments of, man, this team has talent. They have Jordan Travis. They have Johnny Wilson outside. And will they take that next step? I think that Florida State's one of those jobs that I think the past few years the fan base has grown a little bit, just content of where like they are, of the sense of Mega Bowl game, that's good enough. Whereas 10 years ago, the Florida State team we knew was national championship, ACC championship, or bust. I think that that's kind of changing, and I think this might be the year that it really just exceeds that, where the fans know that this is the year or it's never going to be the year, just like Hampton said. LSU 2.5-point favorites in Orlando. I mean, Hampton, I just kind of feel like I'm with you. I feel like last year, I felt like Florida State was like one on sort of a fluke, that it wasn't like by accident, but it was just kind of a, man, LSU botched that one. I think that Florida State would take control of this one, and I don't think they'll win, by double digits, but I think that Florida State's going to pull it out at the end, and really going to, disappoint a lot of LSU fans. I took I went out on a limb, said LSU was going to win the West. Still possible. I will say that LSU playing their home side of the home and home at a neutral site in New Orleans, I believe, is probably closer to Baton Rouge than Orlando is to Tallahassee. So there are other schools in the state of Florida that are closer to Camping World Stadium in Orlando that will remain nameless in this segment. So, but hey, credit to them. It's fun home and home series, but give me Florida State in another close one, but I expect it to be a good game.
Awesome. Hey, that's what we're looking forward to this weekend. But let's just take a second to talk about maybe in the season, who do we see as maybe your favorite to win the Heisman Trophy? So that's the best player in the country. Hampton, who do you think wins the Heisman, which we could probably rename, the best quarterback award?
Yeah, that's a great call. Pretty much that is what it has been, other than when our guy Devontae Smith won it in 2020, and very few and rare other instances over the past decade or so. But it'd be easy to say Caleb Williams or Drake May. That's not fun to me. Everybody has them at the top. I'm going to go with my breakout player last year, who, got to pat myself on the back, I nailed, and may nail it again this year. Give me Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is going to have another great year, build upon what he did last year. He was phenomenal. He was phenomenal. Other than the Georgia game, you take that out, the rest of the year he was riding high, and a lot of that had to do with the caliber of talent that he's playing out there in the Pac-12 as opposed to an SEC defense week in and week out. But also, I just think he's improved a lot. He's improved a ton from his time at Auburn, and Oregon built a system that really fit him. They developed him. His footwork's gotten a lot better. He's more comfortable in the pocket. He's a better decision maker. Give me Bo Nix being in New York in December and winning the Heisman Trophy.
I love that. Graham, who do you got?
Chase, you mentioned that it was a quarterback award, but I'm not going quarterback. This is the year of the RB, baby. Okay. I'm going for a guy that is coming off of injury, but literally lit up college football when he was playing. Hampton, I don't know if this is going to surprise you or not. I'm going with Blake Corum from the University of Michigan. A guy that shows up for big games. Gets hurt in the Ohio State game, and that ended his year. But they played Maryland. He had 243 yards. Plays Penn State at the time, number 10, 166 yards on the ground. Michigan State, 177 yards. A guy that, when the game is on the line, when we know we got to have a good play, they're giving the ball to Blake Corum. I think this Michigan team, coming off a big upset in the college football playoff, losing to TCU. Yeah. Even with Jim Harbaugh out for the first 3 games of the year, I think the scheme is going to be very easy. Hand the ball early and often to Blake Corum. So I'm going RB.
I like it. Hampton, what you got?
Quick point. 1 point for that. He's a great player, and their offensive line is going to be incredible this year. They've got dudes in their starting 5, but they also have depth. 1 point against Donovan Edwards, who had a really good year last year, but with another year, I believe they're going to want to give him more carries with his explosive ability. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they balance that and how that affects his chances. But really great pick and out of the box.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Hey, to round us off right here, last question I got for you guys is the sleeper team. And I think this is more saying, maybe not even to the extent of the TCU run of coming out of nowhere, making that run, but who's that team that we look up in a few months and they're in there and they're fighting meaningful games at the end of the season to, they've already succeeded by where they are, but are fighting meaningful games at the end of the season to maybe put them into the playoff conversation. So, Graham, do you mind if I start with you? Hampton, going to let you have it after that, and then I've got a team that I like to just throw in.
Come on.
We'll see if you guys get it first. So, Graham, what you think?
Yeah, I'm going out west for my Cinderella team. It's a power team, Power 5 team. I'm going with Oregon State. I think it's a team that could compete for the Pac-12 championship. I mean, you look last year, they beat Oregon at home in a crazy game. A team that barely lost to Washington that is really building momentum. I think that when you look at it, people are talking about where's DJ Uiagalelei going to land, and he ended up at Oregon State, and everybody was like, I kind of like that. I think that fits good. Oregon State bringing back the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. Damian Martinez is running back. So I think their run game is very strong. I think that's going to help DJ a lot. And I think that for Oregon State, obviously, they would go get a quarterback like DJ for a fan base perspective. But I think that they added a guy like that because he knew that was a missing piece that they needed. I think this is going to be a good season for him because the pressure's off of him. The pressure is not going to be to win a national championship. The pressure is going to be come home, come back to the West Coast. Let's get you right, and let's allow you to make plays in a system that will fit around you instead of making it be fill the shoes of the first pick in the NFL draft or play this specific type of offense. I think that Oregon State is going to be my Cinderella team. Not the craziest of teams, but I think Oregon State, week 11, week 12, you're going to be like, man, I didn't even know Oregon State was going to play in the Pac-12 championship yet. They're going to take it home. So I think that's a good team. Pac-12 is up for grabs this year. I think that's for sure. Hampton, throwing it to you. Cinderella team. Who's going to wear the crown at the end of the ball?
Hey, the Pac-12 ain't going to be up for grabs next year. We can guarantee that.
That's true.
But when you started, I thought for a minute you were going to steal my team. But you said you're going out west. I'm going to go Midwest. I'm going to go with the Wisconsin Badgers. My favorite hire of the offseason was Luke Fickell. I'm a big, big fan of Luke Fickell, the job that he did at Cincinnati. And I heard Greg McElroy actually talking about this, and I really agree with him. And I'm not going to say Wisconsin's going to do what TCU did last year, but the situations are kind of similar. TCU, you had Gary Patterson that was there forever, had great success, but by the end of his tenure, they needed a new voice. It kind of had gotten stale from a culture perspective. Paul Chryst, same thing. Had success at Wisconsin, had done good things, but it had gotten kind of stale. They needed a new voice. Insert Sonny Dykes at TCU, and you saw what happened last year. Insert Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. They got Tanner Mordecai, the transfer quarterback from SMU, who put up gaudy numbers last year. And I believe they've always got a good defense. And with a more open aerial attack on offense, they're going to be a really interesting team to watch. I don't predict them making the college football playoff, but we didn't see TCU making it last year. And also, they probably shouldn't because they weren't one of the four best teams, but I digress. But Wisconsin, I believe, is going to be a really frisky team in the Big Ten. I cannot wait to see what Luke Fickell does in year one in Madison. Chase, who you got, man?
I like you guys' pick. Mine's a little bit more of just an observation with not much evidence. Hey, give me Michigan State. I've always got a liking for Michigan State.
You and Michigan State, man. You love Michigan State.
They're going to upset somebody's season. They're going to lose a game they're not supposed to lose. But I will say, Mel Tucker is in a position where he's got to win some ball games. So I saw the over-under for them is 5.5 games.
Wow.
I mean, I would say they at least do better than that. They have to. If not, I mean, that is one of the worst contracts ever given because things have exploded very quickly. So we'll see if they can reroute that ship. That's just one of those. Hey, I don't think anybody would have said here. You would have said the same thing if I would have said TCU, a year ago. And that's what's awesome about college football is that, hey man, if you're playing games, you got a chance. So it would be cool to see them come out of nowhere, and we hear Ohio State, Michigan all the time. But I love the Wisconsin pick. Graham, I like Oregon State. Feels like Pac-12's always up for the taking. So, fellas, that's all that I've got. That's all the questions that we have. And the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until then, chew on that. We'll see y'all next time.
Good episode, gentlemen.